Maybe you are thinking, oh, it's about church ministry. That's just for church presenters and the Gideons who call on pastors. But maybe you're limiting your focus of what church ministry really is, or can be. Would you accept the challenge to change your focus? To gain a greater vision as you look through a new lens to see things from a pastor's point of view. And not just the man presenting to churches or those calling pastors. We all need to share this perspective if we are to reach out to the church as our partners for the sake of the gospel. What would it be like?
Have you ever wished you could see the world from a pastor's point of view? Of course you have, hasn't everyone? Well, now you can, with the positively pew-shaking arrival of Pastor Cam. Yes, Pastor Cam. Develop real empathy as you see the world from their point of view. Another committee meeting? I wonder how long it's gonna take her to get to the point. 8 appointments before noon? Are you serious? I have no idea who you are. Oh. You want to drop by and you have all the time in the world. Oh boy. Hey, you know you want one. So just call 1-800-555-1080. That's 1-800-555-1080. Call now. Cut. I'll be in my trailer.
My name is Reverend Stephen Davis. I'm the pastor of Calvary Gospel Church here in Newark, New Jersey.
But I heard the voice of Jesus telling me still to go on. He promised never to leave me alone.
The Calvary Gospel Church has been in the city of Newark since its conception in 1947. We actually came and relocated in the South Ward in 1964 at our present location. It's a working class neighborhood. We will see a number of homeowners here who are professionals, who are lawyers, who are in the professional realms of employment. And also in that, we will see single-parent homes. We know that there are situations here where there are those who might have some type of total or at least partial public assistance. I was born and raised in this city, and this church that I have been the pastor at for 18 years is the church that I came to know Christ as a teenager through its high school youth group. Now I'm its second pastor.
We have to understand where we were and what Christ had done for us.
I've actually been part of the Calvary Gospel Church for 44 years. The pastorate is probably one of the loneliest jobs on the face of the earth. As a pastor, it's a comfort to have Gideons in your church. I think their work with the Gideons has intensified their walk, has strengthened their walk and their commitment to Christ. I'm proud to say that this church has a number of its members who are Gideons, along with their spouses who support what they're doing. A number of them are leaders in our church. A number of them hold offices within the church, and a number of their wives as well.
We asked a group of Gideons from the Newark area to share their thoughts and experiences concerning church relationships. Here's what they said.
You have an opportunity to show God's love to everyone. Being that the pastor is the leader of the church, it's easy for people to kind of move over and welcome the pastor or be close to the pastor or thank the pastor. But we want to let them know that every member is important and every soul is important to the kingdom.
I know that we pray on Saturday mornings, not only for the pastors and the congregations of our local churches, but also for the staff, for the boards of education, for the boards of deacons and trustees and elders, and the sextons and the secretaries. It's all one unit.
I was visiting a church one time, And there was a gentleman, an elderly gentleman, painting the church. He was sitting down resting. He looked like the custodian. And it turned out to be the pastor. And we had about an hour and a half of fellowship. He never had the Gideons in his church. And he never would before this. His church actually just split. But the time we spent praying for his church, he started praying for our ministry. And from that relationship, by treating him in that way, a church that was originally 150 members was down to 70. And he recommended 10 men out of those 70 from that congregation. And that's how important it is.
I had a similar experience to Rick. I was checking out a church that we hadn't been to ever. And I couldn't find the name of the pastor on the front of the building. They had a website, and I was going to go home and check it out. On my way out towards my car, a gentleman pulls up next to me. He's got dungarees and a regular pullover, and he says, can I help you? It was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I didn't connect and be with the church. I said, well, can you give me the name of the pastor? I'd like to write to him. We have a mailing we're going to do. And he said, well, yeah, I can give you the name of the pastor. And he gave me the name of the pastor. And we're talking briefly. And he says, oh, by the way, I'm the pastor. And I've gone back there several times and met with him. That pastor gave us 5 names for a new member plan.
Remember, we don't call it pastor relations. We call it church relations because our focus is broader. And to function as intended, it must move from church relations to something richer and more meaningful, to true church relationships, an indication of an ongoing commitment to and connection with churches in your camp. But how do you build these relationships? Let's hear what some of your fellow Gideons have to say.
We must have a relationship with the pastor because the pastor is the first line of defense for the church and the ministry.
Optimum is that we have a Gideon in that church to take care of his pastor.
Try to be, open and honest and supportive of the pastors.
Make frequent contact with pastors.
It might mean talking to a pastor not just when we need a service.
A lot of times I get to the service early enough even to participate in the Sunday school service, and I stay for the entire service, and I usually have time to go and pray with the pastors.
It's been special for me to be able to have my pastor over for dinner at home and sit down and just let him talk.
Take the opportunity to visit a service at the church at a time when you are not expected or not speaking.
At times you may get there and the pastor says, you had 5 minutes, and now he says, can you do it in 4? And so you have to have that flexibility to do that.
This year we developed a prayer calendar for our camp where we list 31 of our churches. Next to each church name we list the name of the pastor. So when we go out to talk to these pastors, we say, Pastor, we've been praying for you.
I find that in my church, I try to let the congregation know what we're doing as Gideons.
You might expand your contact with a church's staff by sending cards to the youth director following a scripture distribution at a local school to let them know that the event has occurred and that you're praying for them this week.
What's been a blessing to me is constantly to hear how individuals whose lives were saved because of an event that took place through the Gideons.
I was born and raised on the west side of Cleveland, Ohio. My father was a hard-working, union card-carrying, liberal Democrat carpenter. My father was a committed atheist. Dad never went to church for a funeral or for a wedding. He would go graveside or he'd go to the hotel to celebrate at the reception, but because of his commitment and his conviction about the fact that we evolved, we were not allowed to go to church. One night, Dad didn't come home, and when they brought him home, he had been in a bar fight. His face was crushed in and his ribs were caved in, and sitting in bed through those broken teeth and swollen face, he called for me and in a John Wayne fashion gave me his life's philosophy. No matter what you do, be number one. It doesn't matter if you have to cheat and lie and steal, but don't be number two. I decided I needed to be number one, and at 11 years old, 12 years, how do you be number one? Well, I wanted to join a street gang. By the time I was 14 years old, I had been arrested enough, involved in enough gang fights, had been shot once in the leg, and ended up stabbing a boy in a street fight, and was sent to upstate New York to spend my high school behind bars. My first day in reform school, I was stabbed in the neck, and my first week there, my roommate hung himself. After running away 18 times, I was finally sent back to Cleveland, Ohio for wounding a police officer during one of my runaways, and I was waiting to be sentenced to 2 to 4 years in Tico, which is a state prison. Somewhere in a boardroom, someone came up with an idea, so they put us in handcuffs and put us on buses and took us to Parris Island, South Carolina. It's the Marine Corps training depot. By the time we were 18, we were in the jungles of Vietnam. But I came back and got released onto the streets, and the only place to go when you are an anarchist, an angry, violent individual is college campuses. So I bounced from college campus to college campus, and I bounced in and out of jail, 10 days here, 30 days here. I finally pickpocketed a doctor. Kansas City, used his credit cards cross-country, checked into a hotel at Lake Tahoe, got 4 months for fraudulent use of credit cards. I turned 21 in jail. When I was 14, my mother had said, "You're no good. You'll either be dead or you'll be in jail when you're 21." And I thought I reached my mom's expectations. Anyhow, I began to read the Tibetan Book of the Dead and other things, asked for solitary confinement, shaved my head, and started doing yoga. And I really sought to find an answer anywhere but the Bible. And so, hitchhiking cross-country on the way to Miami with the desire to get out of America and go find some answers in a civilization that was a couple thousand years old, we got arrested again. So when the others would sleep at night, I would roll the tobacco out, tear a page out of a book, and roll up cigarettes. So I got my hands on a Gideon Bible. Now, to me, it was just another book. Didn't know what it was at all. So I was tearing out pages in Leviticus and rolling cigarettes, and in order not to have somebody take the book away from me, I started reading it. I was 21. It's the first time I ever held a Bible. I started reading the Gospel of John. But reading the Gospel of John over and over again, several times a day for several days. On December 18th, 1972, at 7 o'clock at night, I finally surrendered. Something shifted inside me. There was a moment where I felt all of the weight of my decisions and my actions, and the weight of the guilt and the shame and the sin was overwhelming. But in the moment that I felt it, there was a freedom from it. And I experienced a wholeness I'd never felt before. It's funny, if you live most of your life in jail to be forgiven when you don't deserve it, it has an effect. I haven't gotten over it. It was 39 years ago this December, and I am still overwhelmed that God loved me enough to forgive me. I know that someday I'm going to be in heaven, and I'm going to know the things I don't know right now. I'm going to know the Gideon who went to a hotel room and got that Bible that had aged out, and he took it to the jail cell and dropped it off. The fruit of that one Bible, I can't imagine when it's all done and we get to heaven how many there'll be, but there'll be hundreds of us that have come to Christ as a result of that one Bible. And God's touching my soul. And I'm going to take them all, and I'm going to find that Gideon. And I can't wait to look in his eyes, because I'd like to wash his feet and tell him how beautiful they are to me. That his ministry rescued me and gave me a supernatural life.